It is important to understand the length tension curve, which indicates that within the normal range or standard position, a muscle can produce the most tension. With passive components factored in, maximum tension is at 1.2 times the resting length. As a muscle is shortened or lengthened to its ends, the tension-producing capabilities decrease. This is for a single muscle fiber, but according to a study by Lieber and colleagues, the length tension curve is still a good approximation for a whole muscle. Active insufficiency was another important concept, which indicates that for a multi-joint muscle, if there is full flexion or extension, there will be a reduced force production. The purpose of this research was to investigate a length-tension relationship at the wrist joint by testing both active insufficiency and a lengthened position during a maximal force contraction. It was hypothesized that the most force produced would be in the standard grip position. 8 subjects completed the test with a mean age of 26 and standard deviation of 4.24 years. Participants were recruited from the DPT class of 2020. They had to be DPT students and be able to hold the maximal contraction at the wrist for 5 seconds without any pain in their upper extremity. For the test, 2 electrodes were placed over the muscle belly of the extensors, 2 over the flexors, and 1 ground electrode on both triceps and biceps muscles. The participant was asked to hold their elbow at 90 degrees, and the dynamometer was adjusted to hit their PIP joints. The participant was asked to maximally contract for 5 seconds while the grip force and EMG for flexors and extensors were recorded. These recordings were repeated for 4 trials: a short grip, a long grip, and with a standard grip, a maximal wrist flexion and maximal wrist extension. A calculation for percent standard of each trial was then performed, taking the maximum force divided by force in standard position, which normalized the data for comparison across trials. This normalization was also done for the EMG, extensors, and flexors. The mean and standard deviation for percent standard calculations were also found. The data showed that the mean force across all trials was less than at the standard grip position. The horizontal orange line on the graph represents the standard grip, and each blue bar represents the percent standard force for each trial. Each trial falls below the standard grip force, including with standard deviations taken into account. The red and green bars represent the data collected from the electrodes on the flexors and extensors, which is not as important for this research question. From the data, the hypothesis was supported because the force production was the highest at a standard grip position when compared to the 4 altered trials. The trials of maximal wrist flexion and extension represented active insufficiency scenarios, and force production was decreased. The short and long grip trials placed the flexors and extensors in lengthened position or visually on the right side of the length tension curve, which also decreased force production. These results were supported by other research studies. A study by Bardwaj and colleagues looked at varying degrees of wrist flexion and extension to determine if grip strength was affected. They found that grip strength was significantly less in flexion, but not statistically different in extension. Looking at Figure 1 in our research, it can be seen that the lowest force produced was in maximal flexion. Another study by Rossi and colleagues looked at tennis players and found that in large and small grip sizes, compared to the standard grip position, grip force was reduced. This emulates the information found in long and short grip positions from our research. Finally, this research is important because it can indicate to a clinician the standard position where a patient should be able to produce their maximal force. Additionally, if the clinician tests through the end ranges of a muscle's position, they can identify unexpected areas of weakness and have a starting point for strengthening end ranges.